Most of the time, we're not even aware of how our minds work. And because of that, we blame everything on what's happening around us. We look at our life circumstances and say, "That's the problem." But the truth is, no life situation is ever perfect. There will always be challenges, no matter how much positive thinking you do. Positive thinking is great, but life will still throw problems your way. The truth is, life challenges everyone. No matter what stage you're in, even people who are highly conscious or enlightened still face challenges. But here's the thing, those challenges are part of growth. They're not meant to defeat you. They're there to teach you something. Maybe we'll come back to that in a bit. The first step to freeing yourself from suffering is realizing that most of it comes from your own mind. We're talking about psychological suffering here, not something external or spiritual. This type of suffering comes from the stories you tell yourself about your life or the situations you're in. Suffering can show up in many forms. It might be something small, like feeling irritated or upset, or something big, like deep sadness, depression, or overwhelming anxiety. These are just two ends of the spectrum, and in between, there's a whole range of ways suffering can show up. Often people don't even realize they're suffering because they're not aware of how their minds work. And because of that, they don't realize there's another way to experience the same situation. Here's a simple exercise you can try the next time you feel irritated or upset. This is a minor form of suffering, but it's a good starting point. Imagine you're in a common situation where frustration builds, like standing in line at the airport. Airports are a perfect example of where people often feel stressed because things don't go as expected, especially these days. When you're in a situation like this, instead of getting more irritated, pause for a moment and experiment with how you respond. Imagine you're stuck in a line that isn't moving, sitting in a traffic jam or on the phone waiting for customer service. The automated message says, "Your call is important to us, but the wait time is 45 minutes. Naturally, you start feeling frustrated, irritated, or even angry. Now, since you're already stuck there, why not use this moment to practice something new? Ask yourself, what would this situation feel like if I didn't add any thoughts or judgments to it? What if I didn't label it as bad or think, this shouldn't be happening? What if I just let the situation be what it is, without adding all that extra mental baggage? Look around you. Notice people moving, sounds, or just your own breathing. Pay attention to what's actually happening, not what your mind is saying about it. You might suddenly realize that the moment itself is free of suffering. The suffering wasn't caused by the situation, but by the story you told yourself about it. That's a powerful realization. This is the start of living consciously. When you understand that it's your thoughts, not the external event, that cause your pain. Until you see this, you live unconsciously, meaning you're completely caught up in the voice in your head. That voice is constantly judging, complaining, or wishing things were different. But the truth is, things are the way they are in this moment. You can't change this moment, but you can change how you experience it by letting go of the story. This insight isn't new. Over 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Epictetus said something similar. Most of your suffering comes from what your mind tells you about a situation, not from the situation itself. Understanding this can be a turning point, a moment of awakening where you begin to see that the thoughts in your mind, not the world around you, are the real source of your suffering. Of course, there are times when an external situation can cause physical discomfort, like when your legs or back hurt, or when it's too hot or too cold. That's real and undeniable. But that's not the kind of suffering we're talking about here. What we're focusing on is psychological suffering, or what you might call unhappiness or negativity. Those inner feelings of distress, frustration, or anger. Most of this psychological suffering doesn't come from the situation itself, but from the mental story you create about it. You might notice this when you feel upset, angry, or overwhelmed with negativity. Your mind might start blaming others, complaining about how things shouldn't be happening this way, or wishing for something that isn't happening but should be. These are all stories your mind creates, not the reality of the moment. Spiritual awakening begins when you start paying attention to these mental stories, becoming aware of what your mind is saying about a situation. But it's not just about situations. It's also about the bigger stories you tell yourself about your life. Many people carry a heavy sense of identity tied to these stories. They feel like their life is a burden, filled with pain, regret, or resentment. And they don't realize that this heaviness is created by their own narrative. For example, some people live with a constant mental replay of past hurts, what others did to them, what went wrong, or even mistakes they made themselves. Over time, these stories build up into a heavy, painful identity. They think, this is who I am, my struggles, my failures, my pain. They don't see that this identity isn't their true self, but a mental story they've been telling themselves for years. This is what some spiritual traditions call the false self. The Buddha referred to it as the mind-made self, which is essentially a fictional version of who you think you are. When you recognize that this mental identity is just a story, you can begin to step outside of it and see yourself more clearly. True freedom comes from realizing you are not your thoughts, your past, or the stories you've been carrying. You are something much deeper than that. When you realize this, something important happens. A new level of awareness begins to awaken in you, something beyond your usual thoughts and mental stories. This awareness or presence isn't part of your mind's constant chatter or the concepts it creates. It's a deeper part of you, a higher state of consciousness. You might notice it in moments when you step back and observe your mind, seeing what it's doing. Those moments bring a sense of freedom, and suddenly, you're not caught up in suffering because you're allowing the present moment to simply be. Now, you might wonder, if I'm not my mind, then who am I? That's a great question. At first, you may have been fully identified with your mind, thinking your identity was made up of your thoughts, your past, your memories, your beliefs, and all the stories you've been telling yourself. These stories could sound like, this is what happened to me, this is what's wrong with me, or this is why I'm not good enough. For many people, this inner dialogue runs all day long. The voice in their head constantly comments, criticizes, or replays past events, saying things like, you shouldn't have done that, or you're not ready yet. This mental chatter becomes their entire sense of self. But here's the most important thing. Life's purpose, why we're here, is to shift out of this constant identification with the mind. At first, this shift comes in glimpses, where you start to experience yourself as something beyond your thoughts. Over time, those glimpses grow, and you begin to live more from a space of awareness or presence. Does this mean there are two versions of us? In a way, yes. On one hand, there's your form identity, the physical body and the mental image you have of it. People often identify with this body, whether they feel pride, shame, or anything in between about it. But your body is only one part of you, and it's not the deepest part, the other part of you, the real you. It's the awareness that observes all of this. It's the presence behind the thoughts, the space that notices the mind's stories without being trapped in them. That awareness is your true self. The more you connect with it, the less you're controlled by the voice in your head, and the more you live in freedom and peace. The first way we identify ourselves is with our physical body. Then we move to the psychological idea of me, which is shaped by our past, our childhood, the culture we grew up in, and the family we were raised with. All of these experiences build a story we tell ourselves about who we are. I call this form identity. It includes both your physical body and the mental ideas you hold about yourself. Everyone has this, no matter how conscious or aware they are. You have a body and a mind until the day you no longer do. But there's something deeper than this form identity. This is what I call your essence identity. Your essence is who you truly are at the core. Words like awareness or presence can describe it, but at its heart, it's consciousness. The light of consciousness itself. This isn't something you can fully understand with your mind or thoughts. You have to experience it in the present moment, because the present is the only real moment there is. Your essence is the space of awareness between your thoughts. For example, when one thought ends and another hasn't yet started, there's a brief gap. In that gap, maybe it's 5 or 10 seconds, you can sense the stillness of pure consciousness. This realization is experiential, not conceptual. It shows you that even when your thoughts and memories subside, you are still there. Imagine this. For a moment, let go of your memories. Forget your name, your past, and stop thinking about the future. Don't think at all. Instead, just be aware. Notice your surroundings, your senses, without interpreting them. Who or what are you in that state when you're no longer telling yourself a story about who you are? This practice reveals a deeper truth. You are not your story. Some people are afraid to let go of their story because they've become so attached to it. They can't imagine who they'd be without it. But letting go of the story can be freeing. For some, it only happens when the story becomes too painful to hold on to, and they can't stand it anymore. In that moment of release, a breakthrough can occur. They discover the deeper essence of who they truly are. My old identity isn't working for me anymore. I want to let it go and step into something new. This is a feeling many people have. But why is it so hard to make that shift? The difficulty comes from something deeply rooted in all of us. For thousands of years, humanity has carried a kind of mental dysfunction, passed down through generations. In spiritual terms, we call this the ego. Now, when people hear ego, they might think of it in different ways, like how Freud defined it in psychology. But in a spiritual context, the ego means being completely identified with your mind, your thoughts, emotions, and everything you mentally associate with you. This way of thinking is ingrained in every person's conditioning, and that's why it's so hard to let go of. For many, the grip of the ego is so strong that it takes a lot of suffering to even start awakening. Sadly, some people never let go. They stay unhappy until the end of their lives, or they face physical illness and stress because the body can't handle the mental strain. When the mind is in a constant state of unhappiness or stress, it disrupts the natural harmony of the body. But here's the bigger picture. Our deeper purpose as human beings isn't just about personal achievements or goals. It's about evolving as conscious beings. We are part of a universal consciousness that is awakening. The universe itself is in a process of awakening, and life forms, like humans, are meant to evolve into higher levels of awareness. This means going beyond the ego and stepping into a new state of consciousness. So, how can someone break free from the constant psychological pain and find inner peace and harmony? First, it's important to recognize that this shift requires awareness. Start noticing how your mind operates, how it clings to old patterns, tells you stories, and creates a false sense of identity. Understand that peace doesn't come from the external world, it comes from within, by letting go of the ego's grip. As a practical step, practice being present. Stop constantly interpreting or judging everything around you. When a challenge arises, observe it without immediately reacting or labeling it. This might feel difficult at first, but it's the doorway to freedom. If you're someone who's been struggling with ongoing mental pain or an inability to feel true peace, start here. Focus on becoming aware of your thoughts and emotional patterns. Take small actions to disconnect from the stories your mind tells you. The path to inner peace isn't about fixing everything externally. It's about shifting your awareness internally. Over time, as you align with this deeper consciousness, a sense of harmony and peace will naturally arise. The best starting point is to focus on the present moment. The present moment is like a doorway into a state of awareness or presence. The ego or the egoic mind often avoid the present moment. It prefers to focus on imagined scenarios in the past or future, but not on what's happening now. The present moment is the foundation of life. Your relationship with the present moment shapes how your future unfolds. In fact, what we call the future never really arrives. When it does, it's just another present moment. Everything you experience happens in the present moment. Your life unfolds entirely in the now. Even the past was once a present moment, and when you remember it, you do so in the now. Similarly, when the future arrives, it will also be the present. There's a humorous example of this. A pub in London had a sign that said, "Free beer tomorrow." But tomorrow never comes because it's always today. On a practical level, we need to plan for the future, for meetings, events, and goals. But on a deeper level, the future doesn't truly exist. All we ever have is the present moment. That's why it's crucial to recognize the importance of the now. If your relationship with the present is unhealthy, your entire life feels out of balance. Now, some people might say, "But my present moment is full of problems. I'm dealing with debt, illness, a breakup, or a failing career. How can I enjoy the present when everything feels like it's falling apart?" It's true that life can feel overwhelming when multiple challenges pile up. Losing money, a job, a home, or a relationship. These are real difficulties, but they are part of your life situation. Your life situation exists in time, but life itself exists only in the present moment. Life is always now. We are always in the now. Since your life happens in the present moment, you need to ask yourself, yes, I have these problems. Maybe I don't know how to pay the rent. My relationship is in trouble. I'm going through a divorce. I just lost my job, or my company is struggling. These problems feel overwhelming. Some of these challenges are real, while others are imagined fears about what might happen. It's important to separate real challenges from imagined problems. Sometimes what we call big problems are just thoughts about what could go wrong. Other times, there are actual challenges happening in your life. Recognizing this difference helps you focus on the present moment without ignoring actions you may need to take to improve your situation. Action is important, but it's secondary to understanding the present moment. A helpful exercise is to ask yourself, what problem do I have right now? At this exact moment? People often start by saying, I'm running out of money, or I might lose my home. But when you focus on this moment, right here and now, and look around, you might realize there isn't actually a problem at this exact second. You may notice your breathing, your surroundings, and admit, reluctantly at first, that in this moment there isn't a problem. The next moment may bring a challenge, but when it arrives, it will also be now. Of course, there are times when you face immediate challenges. If you're walking in the forest and encounter a wild animal, that's not a problem in your mind. It's a real situation to handle. You deal with it by taking action, whether it's running or standing still. But problems, as we often think of them, mostly live in the mind. To move beyond problems, you need to give more attention to the present moment. In the present moment, problems cannot survive. Any problem you have is a burden carried in your mind. It's made up of mental and emotional fears. That's all a problem really is. The rest are just situations or circumstances. These situations don't have to be problems. You either take action to change them or leave them alone, if there's nothing you can do. Either way, they aren't problems. If no action is possible, then shift your attention to the present moment and realize that things are actually okay as they are. Now, prison is a situation where most actions to change your circumstances are impossible. Escape isn't realistic, so the only option is to accept and surrender to the present moment. This surrender isn't a negative thing. It's not about giving up in defeat. It's a positive and powerful surrender. A complete yes to what is. This kind of surrender creates inner strength and peace. You say, this is what is, and stop fighting it. That's where real power begins. When you argue with reality, you amplify the ego. The ego thrives on resistance and conflict. It loves to argue with what is. The ego needs enemies, and it even makes the present moment an enemy. But when you make the present moment your enemy, you turn your entire life into an enemy, because life only happens in the present. It's insanity to fight the very moment you're living. Instead, make the present moment your friend, not your enemy. When you do this, everything begins to change. The future is nothing more than an extension of your state of consciousness now. If your state of consciousness in the present is negative, that negativity is likely to carry into the future. But if you align with the present moment and accept it as it is, you shift your consciousness. That shift positively impacts the so-called future. This highlights the absolute importance of your state of consciousness in the present. Nothing is more important than your state of mind right now. In any situation, ask yourself, what is my state of consciousness as I face this? Are you meeting the situation with resistance, negativity, or a sense of acceptance and alignment? Your relationship with the present moment shapes your experience of life. When you set out to achieve something, obstacles will always arise. These obstacles can take many forms. Sometimes they come from people who don't like what you're doing, or they might come from rigid structures in society, like bureaucratic hurdles. Obstacles are a natural part of any endeavor. The key question is, how do you respond to obstacles? What is your state of mind when they appear? Do you immediately get angry, frustrated, or start complaining? Do you blame others and dwell on how unfair the situation is? Or can you calmly accept this is what it is? Facing obstacles without resistance is a sign of inner power. When you are present and aligned with the moment, the right actions often arise naturally. You don't turn the situation into an enemy. Instead, you face it with a clear mind and take effective action. This approach keeps you from being consumed by negativity. One major challenge for many people is the tendency to complain or stress out when things go wrong. They resist what's happening, thinking, this shouldn't be happening. This negativity builds tension, makes them unpleasant to work with, and spreads bad energy to others. In workplaces, this can create a toxic environment that hurts everyone. The most effective people don't allow negativity to take over. They stay positive and focused, even when faced with challenges. They don't make the present moment their enemy. Interestingly, some of these people may not have studied spiritual teachings. They may have an innate wisdom or learn these lessons in their own way. The starting point is always the present moment. Ask yourself, what problem do I have right now, in this exact moment? Most of the time, you'll find the problem isn't here. It exists only in your mind. When you recognize this, you align with the power of the present moment, which is the power of pure consciousness. This power is far beyond the ego, which is just a reflection of consciousness, like the moon reflecting the light of the sun. The ego itself has no real power, just as the moon has no light of its own. When you align with consciousness instead of the ego, synchronicities and unexpected positive events can happen. This ties into the concept of the law of attraction. When your thoughts are peaceful and in harmony with the present, the right things often come to you effortlessly. Now, the main mistake people make is approaching life from a sense of neediness rather than fullness. They focus too much on what they lack or want to get rid of, like not having enough money. This constant focus on the problem, on the undesirable condition, keeps them stuck in it. Let's use money as an example. How can we attract more wealth or financial abundance using the law of attraction? The first step is to recognize and appreciate the abundance that already exists in your life instead of dwelling on the lack. Shift your focus to what is already good and abundant around you. Abundance is everywhere. In nature, you can see it in the variety and beauty of life, plants, animals, and the cycles of the earth. Even in a city, you can notice the creations around you, like buildings, art, or people. You don't need to own or buy everything to appreciate it. Just noticing and valuing these things is a powerful step. The sun is a great example of abundance. It gives its energy freely and continuously. While it may not last forever, it feels infinite to us. Similarly, the universe is filled with endless energy and resources, and one day humanity will likely move beyond using limited resources like fossil fuels. Right now, you can still recognize the abundance in life, energy, and beauty around you. If you walk past a flower shop, appreciate the beauty of the flowers. If you see a beautiful car or a well-dressed person, enjoy their presence without letting your ego create negative thoughts like, why don't I have that? This kind of appreciation is key. Nature is especially powerful for this. It reminds us of the richness and wonder of life. You can also focus on the aliveness within you. Pay attention to your breathing, your body, and the energy within every cell. This inner awareness is another form of abundance, the life force that sustains you. Some people call this gratitude, but it can also be seen as simple appreciation. By appreciating the abundance of life, even in small things, you shift your focus away from lack. For example, you might look out of a window and see trees swaying gently in the breeze. You don't need to own the tree to admire its beauty or the fact that it's been standing tall for 100 years. Start by noticing the good in life, no matter how small. Acknowledge and appreciate it. This shift in focus helps align you with the abundance already present and opens the way for more to flow into your life. Yes, I own the house I'm living in right now, but one day I won't be here anymore. Someone else will own it. Ownership is secondary. I'm not saying to give up ownership. It can provide stability in life. But there's something more important. Appreciation, or gratitude if you prefer that term, is essential. For example, Oprah mentioned keeping a gratitude journal for many years. She writes down small things she's grateful for, like planting a flower, taking a walk with friends, or simply waking up. It's not about big things like owning a private jet or having millions in the bank. It's about recognizing the small, everyday moments. Another important aspect is giving. Giving can take many forms, like showing kindness or appreciating others. When you admire a tree or hold the door open for someone, you're creating a connection. Kindness isn't about wanting something in return. It's about how good it feels to give. Even a simple smile, a compliment, or an encouraging word can be powerful acts of giving. When you give genuinely, without obligation or expectation, you align with the law of attraction. What you give comes back to you, but it only works when it comes from a place of true joy and not because you think you should do it. Giving feels good because it connects you to others and to life itself. Now, manifesting involves believing you already have what you desire. As Jesus said, when you pray for something, believe that you already have it, and it will be given to you. He didn't say, believe you will have it, but believe you already have it. This might seem confusing at first. How do you believe you have something when you know you don't? The key is to feel as if it's already real in your mind. Imagine how it feels to have it, and connect with that feeling. This deep sense of satisfaction taps into a greater power within you, a sense of aliveness and connection that comes from your own consciousness. Right now, different people may have different desires. One person might dream of owning a big house overlooking the ocean and imagine themselves living there. Another might dream of running a successful company that makes a positive impact in the world. While the images of their desires are different, the feeling associated with these dreams is often the same. It's a feeling of fullness, of life, of completeness. That feeling is the true source of power. When you feel this sense of fullness and connect it to a mental image, that's where manifestation begins. However, the feeling itself goes deeper than the mental image or the specific thing you want to create. This feeling comes from your own sense of aliveness, your deeper presence, and the joy and power of simply being. Manifesting from this place of fullness is key, not from a sense of lack. The fullness is already within you. This also means that if your specific dream doesn't manifest, it's not a failure. For example, in Los Angeles, many aspiring actors work as waiters or waitresses, hoping for a big breakthrough. While a few may achieve this dream, most won't. But that doesn't mean their lives lack meaning or success. They may find other breakthroughs. one's more important than what their ego initially desired. Manifesting from a place of lack often brings needy energy, which works against the law of attraction. But when you manifest from a place of fullness, feeling joy, excitement, and abundance within, you create a rich and meaningful life, regardless of whether your specific dream comes true. Even if your dream takes years or doesn't happen at all, you'll have lived each moment with passion and positivity. This energy is magnetic. It attracts great people, relationships, and opportunities that you might not have imagined. The process of pursuing your dream becomes a beautiful, fulfilling journey. The dream might be what your ego wants, but living from this fullness ensures that your life is rich and rewarding, no matter the outcome. The journey is what truly matters, not the destination. Reaching a goal is just one moment in time, but the journey is ongoing and always happens in the present. Sometimes what you want to manifest doesn't happen, but something else, even better, takes its place. For example, I always wanted to be a professional athlete. I played professional football for about a year and a half before getting injured. I broke my wrist, had surgery, and wore a cast for 6 months. It took a year and a half before I could use my wrist again. During that time, I felt deep sadness, loss, and grief over losing the identity and dream I had worked so hard for. Suddenly, I didn't know what to do with my life. That injury, however, looking back, I'd much rather have this life than the one I originally wanted as a professional athlete. Accepting and surrendering to what happens, even when it's challenging, can open the door to blessings you never imagined. On the other hand, if you do manifest what you desire, coming from a place of fullness allows you to appreciate your achievement without becoming overly attached to it. For instance, say you manifest a house overlooking the ocean. One day, you come home to find the house has fallen into the ocean. If you've been living from a place of fullness, the sense of life's richness remains, even if the physical form is gone. Of course, there might be sadness for a moment, but the same fullness that helped you manifest before will help you create again. It's not about clinging to what you've achieved, but appreciating it, while knowing that your true sense of completeness comes from within, not from external things. Whether living in a grand house or small apartment, that fullness is what brings peace and joy. Sometimes people struggle with the law of attraction because their desires come from an egoic place. The ego wants to achieve things to feel superior or show off to others. Even if you do manifest what you want, pursuing something from a place of ego weakens your power and fulfillment. True manifestation comes from a deeper sense of appreciation and alignment, not from the ego's need to prove itself. Even when something is negotiable, it still often takes hard work and determination to achieve it. But here's the strange part. When you finally get what you wanted, it doesn't necessarily make you happy. In fact, you might feel needy again right after. Why is that? Why do so many wealthy, famous people, even billionaires with big homes and endless resources, still struggle with unhappiness? Why is having everything still not enough? The answer lies in the ego. For the ego, nothing is ever enough. The ego creates a constant sense of lack, a feeling that you're not good enough or don't have enough yet. So no matter how much you achieve or acquire, the ego always craves more. I've met people who seem to have it all. Money, fame, recognition, private jets, the ability to do anything or go anywhere at any time. And yet, they're deeply unhappy. Why? Because once they have everything, they can't use the excuse of, I'll be happy when I get this. They've already gotten it, and they still feel empty. There's no way to fool themselves anymore. That's when things often take a darker turn. Some people start using drugs, chasing physical pleasures, or jumping from one relationship to another in search of satisfaction. They can buy anything they want, but none of it makes them happy. The ego is still there, always demanding more, and it will never be satisfied. A Course in Miracles puts it perfectly. You'll know the ego is at work when, after achieving something, it doesn't satisfy you. There's another saying that captures this idea well. There are two ways of being unhappy. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting what you want. Both point back to the ego. So, how does someone find happiness while striving for more? A better relationship, more career success, more money? The key is to learn how to be happy regardless of whether or not you get what you're chasing. It's about detaching your sense of fulfillment from the outcome and finding peace and joy in the present moment. No matter where you are on your journey, it all starts with aligning yourself with the present moment. This alignment can only happen if you fully embrace the now. I sometimes call this the vertical dimension of life, which is all about being present. Then there's the horizontal dimension, which includes the past and future, where you set goals and work toward them. The horizontal dimension is about becoming, whether it's becoming skilled at something, acquiring things, or achieving goals. This horizontal journey has its place in life and serves its purpose. However, if you focus only on becoming, achieving, or acquiring, you become trapped in the horizontal dimension. You're so focused on the future that you miss the richness of the present moment. The vertical dimension, the now, is inseparable from the present moment. You could think of the symbol of the cross as representing this. The horizontal line represents the past and future, while the vertical line represents the present moment. Their intersection shows how these dimensions meet in life. This idea predates Christianity and can be interpreted as a reminder of the balance between the two dimensions. The key is to discover the vertical dimension, the power of the present moment. Once you do, the horizontal dimension of life, your goals, achievements, and pursuits becomes easier and more fulfilling, because you're no longer relying on it for your deepest satisfaction. Achievements on the horizontal plane may bring some satisfaction, but they can never provide the lasting, profound fulfillment that comes from being fully present in the now. The deepest satisfaction comes from realizing who you are at your core, not as a person striving on the horizontal plane, but as consciousness itself, alive and complete in this moment. This essence of being has no form, no labels, and cannot be explained. It is simply the energy of life itself, here and now. On the horizontal plane, you exist as a person with goals and achievements. But in the vertical dimension, you are already whole. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to add. You are already complete. This is difficult for many people to understand because they don't feel complete. On the horizontal plane, you're never complete, because no matter what you achieve, something will always seem missing. The horizontal plane is a world of dualities, gain and loss, success and failure. You may achieve great things, but something else may always feel out of reach. Now, this becoming dimension of life, where you grow, achieve, and gain, always has two sides. On one hand, you can become stronger, wiser, or wealthier, but eventually, becoming also has a negative side. Your body ages and weakens over time. You lose things. This is the nature of the horizontal dimension of life, where opposites always exist. Without access to the vertical dimension, the horizontal cannot truly satisfy you. The vertical dimension is the present moment. It's about realizing the power of now, which is inseparable from your true essence. This power isn't tied to the ego. It goes far beyond who you are as a person. It connects you to the universal identity, the essence of existence itself. This is what is meant by the statement in the Old Testament when God says, "I am that I am." It's a profound recognition of being itself. You can experience this directly. When your mind quiets and your thoughts stop, even for a moment. Who are you without your thoughts? You can't explain it, but you can feel it. A presence, a light of consciousness, an aliveness within you. Sometimes people sense it through their whole body. A deep awareness that their entire being is alive. The ancient Greeks called this knowing thyself. It's about understanding yourself as consciousness, not just as a person. When you connect to this deeper sense of self, the person you are still functions, but it functions better. This connection is what some might call a connection to God or the source of all life. It's a deeper awareness that ties you to the consciousness shared by every human being. When you interact with someone, you're not just engaging with their personality or their emotions. You're also connecting with the consciousness within them, the same consciousness that is within you. This goes beyond the identity of the person. When you sense the consciousness within yourself, you can also sense that the consciousness in another person is the same as yours. This awareness of oneness is the deeper meaning of love. Love, in its truest form, is recognizing that the other person is one with you. It's not the ego-driven love that says, "I need you, don't leave me or I'll hate you." That's egoic attachment, not real love. True love is seeing yourself in another. But to do that, you first have to recognize yourself beyond the surface level of being a person. When you connect with your deeper self, it changes how you relate to others. There's a sense of unity, a natural goodwill that flows out from you towards everyone, even people you might only encounter briefly. This connection feels good because you're not just seeing the person, you're recognizing their essence, their being. In English, we say human being, which I love because it captures both parts of who we are. The human refers to our personality and identity on the horizontal plane. The being refers to the essence of who we are beyond the surface. Our purpose is to realize this being within ourselves. Once you recognize your own being, you can sense it in others too. That's when you can truly love others. You asked when I feel most loved. For me, there's no difference between loving and being loved. It's all one. I feel that connection whenever I interact with someone. Sometimes they respond to this connection, even if they don't know why. For example, if I'm in a restaurant and interacting with a server, on the surface, I'm just a guest, and they're just a server. Those are our temporary roles, but they're not who we truly are. If I'm present in that moment, I can sense the being behind the role. The server is a human with a deeper essence, just as I am. While they're speaking or serving, I can feel a stillness, a presence that connects us beyond our roles. Sometimes they feel it too, even if they can't put it into words. Without saying anything, there's an unspoken acknowledgement of that deeper connection. Nothing needs to be said. Just recognizing it is enough. When someone responds positively to your presence, it often means they feel drawn to you, enjoy being around you, and love you in their own way. They might not fully understand it, but what they're really drawn to isn't your personality or the person you are. It's something deeper that connects both of you. When you send out love or a positive energy, sometimes it's reflected back to you, and you feel loved. However, there are times when someone is so caught up in their own ego that nothing gets through, and that's okay. That's simply where they are at that moment. But even when it isn't reflected back, it still feels good to share that energy. Love is often mutual, even if it's not fully understood on a deeper level. The same principle applies to nature. When I appreciate the beauty of a tree or a flower, there's a sense of connection, almost as if the tree or flower becomes aware of its own beauty through me. This might sound mystical, but the tree or flower, like all of nature, is also a manifestation of consciousness, just at a different vibrational level from humans. By recognizing its beauty, I feel a sense of oneness with it. In a way, we give something back to nature when we appreciate it. It's as though nature can feel that recognition and loves you back. I sometimes encourage people to spend time with a tree and let it teach them stillness. Trees are deeply rooted in the earth, and their branches reach out into the sky. They're quiet, still, and have been there for decades or even centuries. By being near them, you can learn to connect with a stillness that goes beyond ego. Nature has this incredible ability to teach us, to guide us toward that deeper dimension. Yes, there are still challenges. Life can be described as a balance between being and doing. The being dimension is the vertical, and the doing dimension is the horizontal. Both are important. Some people are more focused on doing, creating, achieving, manifesting. Others lean more toward being, appreciating what is, without having many goals. Every person has to find their own balance between the two. It's rare to find someone who is perfectly balanced in the middle, as that's quite difficult. Now, the ultimate truth is to realize who or what you truly are. You are not merely a person, you are consciousness. You are the universe experiencing itself as you, briefly in this form. But you are far more than that. The first truth, then, is to realize who or what you are beyond the person. The second thing is to understand what you are not. You are not the ego. Much of human suffering is created by the ego, and freedom comes from recognizing that you are not the ego. This recognition opens the door to living without suffering and without the unhappiness the ego creates. The third thing is to practice radical acceptance of the present moment. By fully accepting the isness of now, you can go deeper into realizing who or what you truly are. Acceptance is the key to discovering the peace and freedom that come from living beyond the ego. Once you realize what you are not, the truth of who you are emerges naturally. Now, at the deepest level, greatness is to live consciously. It means embodying unconditioned consciousness during your time here. When you live as consciousness rather than as an egoic entity, you naturally impact the world in profound ways without needing to declare, "I am going to change the world." The world you experience reflects your state of consciousness, and when you align with unconditioned consciousness, your essence, you begin to see and experience a transformed world. Greatness is fulfilling your purpose in this life, which is to be part of the universe's evolving consciousness. It's not about external achievements or conditions, as those are secondary. Your purpose is to embody this deeper consciousness. Even now, you can start fulfilling your purpose. Pay attention to how you act. Do you complain, blame, or make excuses? Do you live as a victim, feeling sorry for yourself? Notice the emotions you live by. Are you so used to guilt or low energy that you don't even realize it? Becoming conscious of these states of mind is part of the journey to living as consciousness. That is true greatness. Thank you for listening.